Hi everyone, my name is Melanie Jaramillo. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to discuss my process on how to make handmade watercolor cards. And for this project, you will need a light pencil, micron pens, assorted paintbrushes, a watercolor set, Strathmore watercolor cards or even mixed media paper, a cup of water, and paper towels. I'll go ahead and leave my tools down in the description below. I recommend that you do some sketching on a scrap piece of paper before even touching your Strathmore watercolor cards, just because you don't want to ruin your paper with a lot of lines, especially if you don't know what the end product is going to be. So you'll be saving yourself a lot of heartache, a lot of trouble trying to get those lines out if you have a plan before even getting started. Now that you have an idea in mind, go ahead and sketch or even trace your image onto the card very lightly. I tend to use a 4H pencil. This helps me so that way I don't lay down any heavy lines, and that when I do erase everything after tracing it, I don't have those ugly lines left over on the paper, and that it doesn't affect the quality of the image. Once you're happy with the image that you've put onto your card, go ahead and start tracing over the lines with your micron pens. One thing that I can recommend is that you make sure that the lines are completely dry before even beginning the painting process, so you don't lose those vibrant colors during the watercolor process. So for my watercolors, I like to start off with a very light wash over the leaves and the flower petals. So I used a very pale green, almost a yellowish green for the leaves, and a very pale pink. So I used just a little bit more water than I do color in my first layers, and let that dry. Now that you've laid down your wash onto your flowers and your leaves, go ahead and start pushing and pulling more colors onto your canvas. You want to just gradually start building the colors. It looks beautiful when you let it dry. You don't want it to end up too muddy, especially if you're using an image that has more colors than what you see here. I really enjoy the look of micron pens in my watercolors, but I don't like taking chances on the micron pens all the time, so I really try my best to avoid those lines, either by coloring inside or outside those lines, so I can make sure that my colors are as bright as possible and they don't become muddy or grayed out just because of those pens. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Do yourself a favor and please tape down your project onto a flat surface, a board, your table, something to keep your fingers off of your canvas. This is really a bad example on my part, but I really recommend it too, so that way you don't warp your paper in any kind of way and you don't leave any fingerprints all over your art. And don't be afraid to let your watercolors bleed outside of the lines. Sometimes I think it actually adds a little bit of character, a little bit of personality to the image. Sometimes I'll even like to use splatters of paint as well as ink throughout the image, just to give it a little extra something. If you ever feel that you are overworking a painting, I would recommend just letting it dry just to see the true colors. Sometimes when it's wet, you can't really tell what it looks like exactly or what the finished product is going to be. So giving it some time to dry might help you to be able to figure out where you need to add paint or where you just need to stop. Feel free to use the micron pens or the watercolor to fill in the black areas of your painting. So there are pros and cons to using both. I found that the micron pens weren't as dark as the watercolor, but I had more precision using the pens over the watercolor and the brush. This is a good example of what I meant earlier. So if I would have used the pen, I think I would have had more crisp and thin lines like I originally intended. But since I used that watercolor and the brush, I had thicker lines than what I intended before. But either way, I'm really happy with the way that it came out, and this is a good learning experience for the both of us. Thank you so much again for joining me today on my first video. I hope that you enjoyed the process as much as I did, and I hope that you were able to learn something from this experience and that it helps you with your next project. Until next time, bye.